Hello and welcome to another episode of Great Women in Compliance with Hemma and Lisa Fine, sponsored by Corporate Compliance Insight. I am Dr. Hemma and I am so pleased to introduce you to our guest today, Neta Meidav, visionary entrepreneur and CEO co-founder of Vault Platform. Vault Platform is championing a new form of HR and compliance technology known as the Active Integrity Platform. She's disrupting outdated models of workplace misconduct, reporting, and resolution. The venture-backed company was co-founded in London as an impact-led technology startup, enabling trusted integrity in organizations and bringing innovative digital solutions to the problem of unreported misconduct, ethics, and ESG violations in the workplace. Welcome, Neta. I am so thrilled to have you join us today. Let's kick it off, if I may, with you telling us a bit about yourself and your origin story in your own words.
For sure. And may I just say how excited I am to be on the podcast. I think it's my second time on the podcast, but it's been a few years and I keep a very warm place in my heart for the Women in Compliance podcast because I think you're doing very important work in promoting women in our industry. So yeah, great to be here again with a few years now under our belt, looking at this from a fresh perspective. And yeah, I'm really glad that you invited me once again to tell you about the origin story of Vault. So I always consider myself to be an accidental entrepreneur. I never thought I'll be a tech startup founder and CEO. I was working for the British government for more than 10 years. I had an exciting career in climate change negotiations and definitely was on a very different track to the one I am on today. But the idea came to mind. And the idea was very much driven by kind of employee activism and the rise of the Me Too and then the Time's Up movement, as well as other social movements that were very prominent at those days. So we're talking about kind of 2018, 2019. And it brought back memories of something that happened to me. It's a story I shared numerous times, but in my first job out of university, I experienced misconduct firsthand, behavioral misconduct, and I never even considered reporting it. Although I knew there was a hotline number hang on a poster in our cafeteria, and I knew where the HR office is, but I never even considered reporting it. It was such a foreign alien experience to me. And I decided to walk away from what was a very exciting opportunity and a job that I got as a young adult and again, fresh out of uni. And it pushed me out as opposed to speaking up about it. And then I've observed how misconduct is being handled in large organizations since, found myself working for the government for the years to come. And I experienced it not firsthand, but secondhand through colleagues and friends at work. And I remember one particular example where a colleague experienced something that was definitely a breach of our civil service code. And I encouraged her to report it. I sat next to her. We tried to decipher the online web form to report misconduct. And it was a horrible experience. It just screamed, don't complete this. It was incredibly discouraging. And she dropped the process as well. And so when the Me Too movement started to unfold, it was becoming clear that there is a huge, what we call a trust gap in organizations between companies and their people. And that people are not speaking up about these experiences internally. They are media, they're turning to lawyers, or they're not reporting it at all until it erupts and becomes a huge scandal that we all read about in the news. And so I started researching this extensively, thinking about my own experience and what was such a big turnoff for me that put me off from reporting and what happened to colleagues later on. And then I realized technology could be the answer. Like we can leverage technology to create a different mechanism, a new mechanism that creates more trust, that helps people at a very sensitive moment in their lives when they need to make that decision, but also helps companies in managing those things better and building that bridge between company and its people. And that's what we really should be focusing on. So that triggered a lot of research into what's broken in the world from that standpoint. and how modern technology could really shift things, not just by making them digital, but by actually creating a different reporting experience for individuals.
Oh, I love that. I love the way that you're pioneering this idea of trust tech and bridging that trust gap in corporations. And so much in what you said there, not only is the trust gap, do people even want to hear and these things are happening in the corporation, but it's the way in which, as you said, we're experiencing those interactions when they're necessary. And I love this is one of my favorite things to talk about is the employee experience can be improved here despite our best intentions. I think there's many of my listeners that will be right there with you, will be motivated by seeing wrongdoing and wanting to provide avenues of redress in organizations. But one of the last things we tend to think about, unfortunately, is the employee experience from the first point of contact. So let's talk about how you can leverage technology for the employee experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's just think about how important that is. I think the employee experience is important across all the functions in our enterprise day-to-day lives, right? And if you look at other functions, if you look at your call as an ethics leader or compliance leader that is listening to us right now, let's think about how the employee experience has transformed the HR function or the cyber function or the risk function. They've been completely transformed. And for some reason, ethics and compliance have stayed behind the curve in many ways. The solutions are very much built for the compliance team, which is very important. Don't get me wrong. We've definitely invested so much in case management. It's incredibly important. But we're not bringing people with us on this journey if we're not nailing it from the employee experience standpoint. And now let's think about specifically when it comes to speak up. You have several elements sit under ethics and compliance. One of them is also training, right? Which is also very important, of course. But let's consider how different they are in terms of where they meet the employee. Training is something that all employees must undertake, and they will follow the training modules provided by and chosen by their employer. Now, of course, I'll be the first to say we need a delightful experience there and one that is truly engaging for all employees. But they don't really have a choice. They need to complete it, whatever it is. If it's a good experience or bad experience, they all need to complete it. Reporting is different. Speak
Mhm.
up is different because, first of all, speak up is usually something we go to when we are going through, again, a very sensitive moment in our lives where we need to make the decision whether we report or not. And it's up to us as individuals whether we report it or not. You can't force a person to report a wrongdoing in the same way as you make a person go through a training, right? So it's really important that we get it right, that we understand that at that particular moment, we need the right interface, we need the right access, we need to create psychological safety in order to cultivate that speak up, in order to ensure that the confidence is there, that the comfort is there, that the trust is there, so that the person can overcome all those barriers that they're going through. And currently, it's not nice to be them. They're not in a good place. Let's help them in order to do the right thing and report something. So, when we're talking about an employee experience, the first element is really how do we use technology in order to create that moment? And it's almost like we need to think about it it's almost like from a consumer perspective, which we
Mhm.
often don't think about. We think about B2B, but this is actually, at Vault, we had to build our app and other intake methods almost as if we're building for consumers if we don't get it right, we will lose them. So that's incredibly important. And then another element to think about is proactive ethics. And that's something we'll come back to when we talk about AI, which I know is one of the subjects you've prepared for me today, and I'm excited to talk about. But the entire reporting experience is today very much an aftermath experience. It's something that we do retrospectively after an event has happened. But how can we actually ensure that we have a proactive approach to ethics where we nip the bad in the bud, right? Like where we can actually prevent that experience from happening in the first place and enable an ethical action in the day-to-day lives of employees. So that's another thing to think about that we can actually do today with tech.
You are speaking all of my love languages. First, customer experience, then we're going to get to AI, and also this idea of proactive compliance. I like to use the term crowdsourcing risk intelligence. And for me, what that means is honor the gift that is the speaking up, because that information is better than any customer giving you money. That really is giving a tangible benefit to the organization. If you get that information in seamlessly, effectively, with someone that's willing to do it with ease and peace of mind, then you can use that information and prevent harm. So lots to cover here. Let's just quickly go back to the customer experience before we move off that, because I think it's really powerful. It baffles me in a way. I try to think, okay, this makes so much sense what you're saying, Netta.
But how?
Not just how, but why? Let me just go back one step before we get to the how. Now
Yeah.
you answers to the how. But why are we not doing this? You said it was unique. Not unique, but we're certainly lagging behind when it comes to ethics and compliance. And I think to myself, is it because we think our customer is a potential regulator rather than the actual employee? And look, there's nothing wrong with being well versed in what the regulators require or suggest we should be doing when it comes to a speak up culture. But I do wonder if we think too much about the regulator and not enough about the employee, we're going to miss out. It's actually going to be futile. And you'd said in your own experience with your colleague, you sat there and wondered if it was designed to dissuade you from speaking up. I think we have to ask ourselves that question, even if we don't intend to design it to dissuade people from speaking up. Are we inadvertently causing that if we don't do what you're saying?
You're so right and correct in the way you're thinking about this. It reminds me that about 2 years ago, I sat down and I wrote a manifesto, and I wrote it from the eyes of the ethics officer. I interviewed dozens of ethics and compliance officers because one of the things that we realize at Vault is that there is truly a new generation and a new wave of thinkers in the ethics office that are starting to see their job as moving away from ticking the box and just be the gatekeeper to be true agents of change. They have critical job to fulfill. They have a much more of a seat at the senior management at the board level, and they have a crucial role in protecting the company and its people from harm.
Mhm.
And in the past, if we used to, again, from that perspective of compliance, if we used to just sweep it under the rug, whereby passive reporting channels were enough, because that's what we're doing, we're sweeping under the rug. Today, the role of the top performing ethics officers in their organizations is to prevent it from happening, is to take a very active approach to this. So after interviewing dozens of ethics officers and understanding things from their perspective, I sat down to write, I'll read you one paragraph from this manifesto that we created. We created this when we realized that kind of our new tagline is integrity, it's just good business. It's about bringing the purpose, the integrity, together with the business objectives and the good ethics that companies should have. And the manifesto reads, as ethics and compliance leaders, it's our job to make sure business stays in good standing, meets regulations, and abides by the law. We're here to keep the company safe and keep the business moving forward. That often means we need to keep tabs on what's going on within, making sure that we avoid headline grabbing scandals and prevent potential catastrophes from landing at our front door. We set up a hotline. We put our policies on posters, and we encourage keeping an open door. While our jobs were never easy, they were never this hard. Social media and the obsessive 24-hour news cycle means that bad news hits the headlines in seconds. Irreparable damage can happen in an instant. Risks are higher than ever. Simply complying to regulations used to be enough to make sure the business kept chugging along. Used to being the operative words. We are in the business of doing business, which with clear and concrete indicators of what growth is and what success looks like. Doing good was an afterthought. But the truth is, doing good is good for business. Real protection doesn't mean stopping things from going public. It's about preventing them. And with that manifesto basically is embedded in our product thinking. That's how we're
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah, that's so important. It's embedded in your product thinking. And again, we're going to slow this down a little bit. There's so much good stuff in there. The manifesto itself, genius and much needed, and really articulates good intentions. In fact, I would say the good intentions of all of our listeners, right? We're in this profession because we want to do what you said. But we've rested a lot in just wanting to do it and not knowing how and not being able to operationalize those good intentions, I think. And again, we could talk all day about why, but I know we want to get to the how. You'd said our jobs were never easy, but they've never been this hard and we need to keep moving forward. That also, to me, is like a call to action. We should rise up and see that if we don't keep up, we're going to really be left behind. There's so much that you've said that inspires me. But the other thing that I think you said is we've got, it doesn't need to be a pipe dream. I know I've got another quote that you wrote. We can go from tick the box to above board, right? And being above board is not a pipe dream. It is something we can do together. So,
100%.
yeah, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying 100%.
Yeah. Then let's go to again, I'm saying we can and I want to. You have spent your time showing us how. So, how can we leverage this disruptive technology to go from tick the box to above board? Let's start by asking you, what is the Active Integrity Platform?
So the Active Integrity Platform, on the face of it, it's an all-in-one speak up, case management, and data analytics platform. But it's much more than that because, as we said, it's the employee experience that really guides the whole journey with our platform. And for us, before we talk about tech, because it's really not about tech, it's about the problem that we solve. The problem that we solve, going back to this whole employee experience, customer experience lens, is to understand what stops people from coming forward and reporting. What are their concerns? What are they worried about? What is it that goes through their head? And how can we help them in that moment? So what we found after serving thousands of workers in all different environments, office, the factory, from the factory floor to Wall Street, okay, we realized that there is a common fear, a common experience. And a lot of it is things that I'm sure are known to ethics officers today. Am I really anonymous? Is this, if I'm choosing anonymous, is this really anonymous? But then we found that there are other concerns, real concerns. What happens to my report after it's reported? I actually want to know who is the person who takes care of me within my organization. Is that a real person? Do they have a name? And will they let me know what's happening? Can I reach them after I submitted a report? Can I have a conversation? So these are real hurdles that keep people from coming forward. And then you have real blind spots in the org where serious misconduct is lingering on and not being reported. So tech today can really solve for that. One of the other features we're really known for, I love this because from the day one of Vault's inception, this was the kind of an idea that is still a very known feature in our platform, is the idea of go together, the idea that specifically for behavioral conduct issues, people are afraid of coming forward on their own, and go together enables them to report under the condition they're not the first or only ones to be reporting this. And what we found is that specifically with women and other underrepresented minorities in the workforce, the likelihood of them coming forward with Go Together is 8 times more than without it. So we're increasing the levels of speak up and comfort in speaking up through this very unique feature. So communication, the ability to communicate between reporter and case manager, be it anonymous or not, the ability to have a chat where each side can reach each other, the ability to get status updates directly, again, even if you're anonymous, to get notifications to know where things are at with the investigation and whether it has been resolved, and the ability to report via Go Together, as well as anonymous or in name, is incredibly important in this journey.
You're not only bridging the trust gap, you're bridging the gap between the compliance or the corporation's good intentions and the employee's unmet needs. So I'm hearing that you've done the research, you've actually gone out there and figured out what are the pain points, which
Yeah.
we couldn't have done at the scale that you've done. I think you've done it way beyond what any one employee base. And then you've responded to that in the technology is enabling us to bridge that gap.
Exactly, exactly. And even like before we're talking about the kind of the ins and outs of the tech itself, accessibility is incredibly important. So when we're talking about the employee experience, we want to be there for the employee where the employee is at. So that means that we're moving to digital means because a hotline is about as relevant in 2024 as a fax machine. Yes, they still exist, but it doesn't mean that's the preferred way of people to communicate with each other. We need to think of other ways, and those ways are like our phones, right? Our phones, apps, the ability to utilize my work Slack or Teams channel in order to report. So truly bringing the reporting experience to the 21st century, which is, you know, we're a quarter in. We should, we're a quarter in. We should be deep within the 21st century experience from a tech perspective, from an accessibility perspective. Yes.
Oh, you're so right. You don't mean a quarter, 3 months. You mean 25 years into this century. You're right. Oh, gosh. How sobering.
There
Well,
we
you've
are.
been doing a lot with your time in this quarter. I know that. Let's go to the disruptive technologies that we all know are available to us. There's a lot of reticence, I think, about AI for obvious reasons. And wouldn't it be our job as lawyers and ethics and risk compliance officers to be the ones that are risk averse? At the same time, as I know you've seen and you've done your speaking tours, people are excited about the opportunities, and many of us just aren't tech and don't know how to get started. So, what have you been able to do in the active integrity platform to leverage disruptive technologies to improve the employee experience and build that trust gap?
Yeah. So the the bad news is we're all behind. I was behind. I will tell you in a second how like my perspective of AI and how it's now embedded into our product roadmap has changed completely.
Mm.
But speaking to customers, I want to draw the picture for a second. Whilst many of our prospect customers are still moving from the old world of hotlines and legacy case management systems where everything is very manual and analog. And the first wave of technology has been very much about digitizing, right? Making things quicker, more available, more synced together, more holistic in their experience. That has been the first wave of digitization that we've seen in ethics and compliance. So moving away from the hotline into digital speak up means, as well as having a more synced, united case management experience, communication between case manager and reporter, and let us not forget data. So data that is real-time data, not one that you need to mine for in your Excel sheets, but one that is really there for you, that you can slice and dice in any way you want in order to report back to the board or to any other, or to your management or to regulators, if that's what you are required to do, and to show what's really happening within the organization. That has been the first wave. But what's happening with AI today is mind blowing. And I really think that honestly, our lives are about to change dramatically in the same way that the last, you know, 20 to 25 years have been defined by the internet era, by Google. Okay. The next 20 to 25 years will be completely changed. We're already seeing this. People are shifting to Chat GPT for their search and other models, of course. But they are the search function, which is the most basic internet use that we all share, is going through a dramatic change these days. And people are joining this revolution with great numbers every single day, where they change the way they search online, they change the way they engage with the internet. And that's only going to go in that single direction. So where we were focused on how AI can help ethics and compliance operations, and we've done that, and we've done beautiful things with it. For example, dynamic translations, the ability to translate every report into any language from any language, the ability to have a chat with the reporter, live chat in any language, so that an English speaking case manager can speak to their Portuguese employee and vice versa without any intermediary or anything that stops them in between, which means you can now run your ethics business function in the way you want to, because you have the technology to really support you in that way. So that's a great example of how we used AI. But now we're really seeing the next wave of AI, and what we're about to release, Hemma, is so exciting that I can probably talk about just that for a whole hour. But the whole idea is you can bring your policies to life with AI. You can ensure that your code of conduct directs the actions of your employees in their day-to-day lives. So what Vault is about to announce very soon, I'll give a little preview now, is the ability for every employee to consult your code of conduct, your policies, by describing a situation that they're facing. For example, I said in a business dinner, can I accept this gift right now? Is this according to our gift and entertainment policy? and it will pull out the right answer based on your company's code of conduct and your company's policies and engage with the employee in a conversation to guide them in the right way based on your company's policies. And that's the next wave of AI and what it can do and the way it can transform organizations from within. And I think it will only help the ethics function to claim a crucial role, an even more crucial role within the organization.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I've been waiting for this, so thrilled to hear that it's being released. It's so important. We know this should be possible, yet we're stuck in the last century or maybe the century before with big tombs of policies and knowledge content that people can't access. So I 100% agree that it's necessary and needed, and I'm so excited to see how it's coming to light. Again, great that you're able to find a pain point and then bridge the gap between our good intentions and the actual reality on the ground. And I agree with you. A lot of times when we think about speak up culture, we think about hotline numbers. It's late, right? We're at the point where we're thinking something's gone wrong and how are we figuring it out? But if we can provide tools that prevent, that proactively get people the information they need to inform decision making, our job will be revolutionized, right? Our job is no longer reporting just hotline numbers up and down to the board. Now we're talking about how we're keeping the business moving forward. So again, we're 100% aligned. If you know me at all, I've not stopped asking for this. And I'm so grateful to hear that Volt has taken the lead in this. Again, trust building technology, customer experience. I can visualize it already. You've been an employee, I've been an employee. We need to be able to get our answers fast and move forward quickly. So thrilled to hear about that. When can we see this in action? How do we get
It's
to see it?
coming very soon. I'm not going to commit to a date
Okay,
here.
okay. But
Let's
it's
just
coming
say that
soon.
a big release is very soon, and we're thrilled to lead this again to get us from where I hope kind of we're already got to, which is understanding that we need to move to a more digital way of and technology enhanced way to manage our reporting, our case management, and our data, our disclosures. Another important topic to actually create agents of ethics, guiding and helping employees through their day to day dilemmas, through their day to day experiences. And again, it's about preventing harm from happening, harm to our people, harm to our company, harm to our reputation, harm to our bottom line. And we're incredibly excited about this release. It's going to be huge.
I'm excited with you and for you, and I can't wait to see it. I think you're right. It's about preventing harm and being proactive. It's also about just keeping people moving forward on their day to day jobs with ease and peace of mind, isn't it? I just need to get on with my job, and I don't want compliance to be the office of no or the block or friction. I want it to be the office of unlock this opportunity for me by keeping them
Yeah,
going forward. And so you're right, getting answers fast in the palm of your hand so that you can make decisions, informed decisions as an employee, I think will be part of the trust building, but it's also part of the culture building. Right? What kind of company do you want to be in the next quarter or a few quarters of the century? You want to be the company that unleashes the talent you've got. Part of what you're talking about is that we're not here just to scare you about potential harm. We're here to help you keep moving forward on what you want to do
indeed.
responsibly and ethically.
Indeed. It's exactly that.
Obviously, I consider you a pioneer in trust tech. Maybe you even coined the phrase trust tech. And we've talked a lot about bridging the trust tech gap. I know it's also very important to you to pay it forward and make sure that other women coming up in tech, the GRC space or beyond, are supported. Can you tell us before we get to what you've done for others? What's your experience been there? Have there been challenges as a woman in tech in this space?
First of all, yes, it's been challenging. Been challenging. And I never in the beginning, and I did not approach it with that lens at all. It really wasn't about that. But when you see the numbers of venture capital funding and the fact that only 2% today is being allocated to women-led startups, you understand that our starting point is incredibly disadvantaged, and you can't just remain like blind to that. You have to act yourself. So first, I will say the paying it forward is a huge part of my day to day. Every week, I spend a number of hours in mentoring and coaching other female founders who are earlier in their journeys than I am. But I'm only doing something that I truly received and got because I'm part of numerous female founder communities, and I have incredible mentors in this community that were invaluable to me in my journey. Women that have really paved the way for me and were there for me and were always a WhatsApp message away or a call away when I encountered the numerous struggles that one can imagine that you encounter when you're trying to break into the world with a new product, with a new company. And I think it's especially important in compliance because here the numbers are starting to be really low. There are very few of us in the compliance space, in the reg tech space. And it's really important to keep the doors open. And I'm doing my share. I think, again, one of the things that I'm really inspired by is when our customers are paying attention to this so that their procurement policies are all about adopting solutions from women led organizations. And I think that because the reality is that it's more likely that it will be a startup than an incumbent that has a female leadership. And so having that openness to innovation, having the openness to disruptive technologies is actually also an openness to adopt technologies from women or minority led owners and founders. And that is incredibly important that we keep that in mind throughout the chain.
So important that we draw up those chairs to those tables or create new tables for women founders in this space. And the other piece I think I've read about you is that I think you've been recognized as an extremely successful impact driven business. I think, again, I read somewhere that you have impact baked into the DNA of Vault platform. And I love that phrase. I'm always looking for ways to find impact from activity to impact and to see that you have not only been able to take your place in the startup world, in the tech world, in the GRC space, but do that in your own way, right? Bring this purpose driven vision, mission to bear. So can you talk to me a little bit about that? For anyone in the audience that might be thinking they want to start up a business, but they want to make sure they're true to their values, and the whole idea of it is to drive impact. How was that for you? And what were the challenges there?
Yeah. And look, and I want to say exactly for those people who are might be considering this amongst and I really encourage the wonderful women in compliance that are listening to go down this exciting track. You don't have to be an impact led startup to be a value led startup. I think values are incredibly important. They become immensely important only if you manage to not just have them as writings on your nice, like stickers on your wall or in your employee handbook, but actually you live and breathe your values. For us at Vault, every single job interview, we don't ask directly about how how kind of the person fits our values. We're not explicit about that, but we have our values in the back of our mind. And at the end of every interview, we ask ourselves whether in their answers we could find proof that our values are answered. For example, one of my favorite values at Vault is be the master and the student. So every person who joins the company has something to learn and something to teach others. You bring your expertise, you want to share it with your colleagues, but you're also on a learning path. And if you don't acknowledge that you have something to learn, it probably means your ego is out of check. And then Vault is just not the right place for you, if that's the case. So this is a great way for us to keep, I always say, to keep ego and talent in opposite directions. So that's incredibly important. So values are immensely important. And I think one of the biggest privilege I have as a founder is that at the end of the day, I get to choose the people I work with. My gosh, what an amazing privilege that is. It's very unique. And I acknowledge that and I'm humbled by it every single day. But also with my team, I get to set the values that will drive this company and pave its future. And that is, again, an immense privilege I have that I'm not taking for granted. Being an impact led startup means that you have a dual bottom line. You have the bottom line of growing the company, making it big and profitable and meaningful. And that is certainly a bottom line that we're committed to, that we're committed to our investors, we're committed to our customers to grow that company, to grow our company in that manner. The second bottom line is the bottom line of impact is that we're truly here to make a dent on the world, to make things better for employees and for companies, and to make companies more ethical and more safe, and to mitigate risk that impacts human beings at the end of the day. So that is something that is incredibly important for us. how we make sure it's baked into our DNA. Again, it goes back to the people we hire and their motivations. We really dig in. I'm giving a great hint now how to pass a job interview at Vault. But and again, my biggest pride of all is our people. But we're really digging into their motivation to join the company. And I can assure you, Emma, and I know this in all my heart, is that the people who come and work here are the people who truly care about our mission.
Mhm.
They will bring in their personal stories or their partner stories or their colleague stories. They want to see succeed because they want the mission achieved. And that is something that means I think it's one of the biggest strengths of Vault. It helps us through the highs and the lows. And yeah, it creates a very special company, a special kind of a company.
It really is special. Thank you so much for sharing that for us. I've met a number of your team members, and I can certainly attest that I wouldn't have known they were handpicked, but now it makes perfect sense of the people you've got on your team. And I'm really grateful to you for sharing that on so many levels. First and foremost, again, as culture builders, ethics and compliance professionals, we are supposed to be helping the company live its values and be in alignment with its values. And I love the way that you described in your case, if you know those values crystal clear, even in the background in every conversation, you can be looking for it. So if you want red cars, you will see them everywhere. You are looking for those values. And
Exactly.
you are, I think, unapologetic about that. Where you started, you know what you want to be. So that's one thing. Also, just going back to the product a little bit, you talked about leveraging the talent of the people to have that impact. I still think that's what your product's doing. Your product is helping us leverage the talent of our employees and their vantage point to have impact. So it's interesting to me to hear you talk about your company values to see how they're actually transformed into the product and they let the rest of it. So I wanted to say that because it's so clear to me that by having a very strong commitment to your vision and values, it's pervasive and it shows up everywhere. So wonderful.
Exactly. And you can imagine integrity and ethics is definitely, we're a smaller company than all of our customers are far bigger than us. Yes. But integrity and ethics it runs through our blood. It runs through our DNA. It's immensely important to me as a founder because yeah, can you imagine? We're trying to enact this change in the world. So we feel like we really need to lead by example ourselves. And that's incredibly important for us.
What do they say? Be the change you want to see in the world. And
The change you want to see.
thank you so much for being the change you want to see, but not just that, for, I'm going to use the word again because I love it, bridging the gap between our intentions, our great intentions and operational reality. You actually are creating a product and creating tools for us to do the things we say we want to do. We've been saying we want to do them for years, for decades, for too many quarters, but now that you are giving us the opportunity to do it. So I'm really grateful to you. I was saying to you at the beginning of this call, I'll repeat it here for our listeners, that I've got so many things I love to talk about that I'm passionate about. And then I read your manifesto. I was like, I wonder if I heard these from Neta. You never know where your idea came from. But you've been very inspiring to me. You've been a mentor. I think I might come and apply to be your chief compliance officer and maybe help because it's just such good
Uh,
stuff.
wow, I love
Here first.
this. I love the thought. It's out there. That's it. We're gonna have a lot of people. A lot of people heard that's the intent for the future. I'm gonna hold you to it.
It's partly because when you're describing the working environment, and again, the culture and the fact that someone can come with a big lofty idea of being the change they want to see, and then they can actually do it in an environment, in a working environment. That to me is inspiring. It's good to know that there are jobs like that out there, let alone that we as ethics and compliance professionals have chosen the right profession. And we just need to focus now on how to operationalize it. So yes, so much inspiration. I know I've gone on and on, but I'm really grateful to you. You've sparked in me a lot of excitement and enthusiasm for what I do. So thank you. Can't wait to hear more about the releases. Where can we find out more if we want to about you, your work, Vault's platform?
You can always find me on LinkedIn. You can find us on www.bulkplatform.com. You can find us through Ethisphere, which we've now partnered with. There are definitely multiple ways to find us. And we're excited to hear from you all. And I want to thank you because your name came up recently. I was talking with my head of marketing and she said, who are the main influencers? Who are the main influencers in ethics? And I said, Emma is
Oh,
obviously. And so thank you for the work you've been doing in championing for our profession and the industry. And I don't know, I heard through the grapevine that a little book is about to be
yes, we're
but
recording on launch date for our book, The Art of Ideation. So yes, thank you for mentioning that. It's very exciting. Very humbled to be called an influencer. I feel like I'm having a job interview with you now. I know that I can be a master and a student.
No.
And certainly by embracing this community, by being embraced by this community, I feel like I'm learning so much that I get to apply my day job. It gives me vision and hope for the future. And I like to say together we can do hard things. You are doing hard things well, but we're doing it together. And I think we're all in this together. So again, very good to say, but thanks for being part of the Great Women in Compliance community, being a great woman in compliance yourself. And I'm glad that we had you back to give us an update. We'll have you back in another few quarters to see what else is new. But really grateful to learn from you today and really grateful to have you here. Thanks, Netta.
Thank you, Emma.